If you look into a small, sleeping town in Scandinavia, you'll find that life there is nowhere near as boring as it seems to newcomers. That's exactly what happened to an ordinary guy like me. When I got home from work on Wednesday afternoon, Annie, my wife of 12 years, told me, "Katrin called me today and asked if I wanted to go to the hotel with her and dance tonight. There's a good band there tonight. She loves to dance. Her husband never wanted to go with her, and she doesn't want to go there alone." I agreed. "Is that okay with you?" Okay, but I was a little surprised that Katrin had asked her. Despite being in the same girl gang that usually meets once a month for fun, neither Annie nor I had ever seen Katrin before she joined their gang through one of the other girls. Annie didn't really like her, and they had never done anything together before. At 8:30, she was ready to go out. She was dressed in a dark red top, a short black skirt. She wore dark tights and black high-heeled shoes on her pretty legs. She really was gorgeous, to which I said to her, "You are gorgeous. I wish you would dress so sexy to seduce me sometimes." She burst out laughing and replied, "I don't need to dress up for you. I already fucked you yesterday." I almost said, "Who are you dressing up for then?" But I kept quiet. Then she asked me to drive her to her hotel, which I did, although I found it a little funny why Katrin, who lived out of town, didn't pick her up on the way. I even offered to catch up with her at the hotel after the dance if she had to wait a long time for a cab. I woke up when she got home at 2 o'clock. We hadn't talked much. She said she had fun and took a walk around the house to get some fresh air after all that smoke. I didn't bother asking her for details. She works part-time at a women's clothing store, usually from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., and was asleep when I left for work. I'm not a jealous or suspicious person, and if she had told me she was dating someone else in the gang, I wouldn't have wasted a second in thinking further about it. But Katrin has piqued my curiosity because they don't really like each other. Plus, Katrin lives in a village 10 kilometers from the city center, doesn't drink, and so she usually goes to their girls' parties. If two girls go to a dance together, one in her own car, why not pick her up on the way to the dance and even drive her home after the dance? The drive will take very little time at all. It takes 50 minutes to walk from town to our house, and why wouldn't Annie do it on a rainy September evening in high heels rather than ride for a few minutes in Katherine's car? I was curious if Katrin was even at the dance or if Annie had picked her name because she knows that I usually make small talk with the other gang wives when I see them. But I had never talked to Katrin and therefore would never ask her about their night out. When I got home after work, I was sure something was going on, and I had an idea that made me ashamed because I had never suspected her of cheating before or looked for signs of cheating after her bachelorette parties. But sometime there must be a first time for everything, so I began my investigation by counting our condoms. Annie got sick on the pill, so we use condoms. I buy them in packs of 12, and I knew for sure that I had opened a new pack on Saturday, and we only used one on Saturday and one on Tuesday, so there must be 10 left. I pulled out a drawer in my nightstand and counted. There were 12 of them. I counted again and discovered that 2 of them were a different brand. It hit me. Condoms are sold in 3 packs in the hotel men's and women's restrooms. Could it be that she had bought 3 packs, used one, and was too crafty to throw away the 2 leftovers? I had to sit down and calm down. Surely there must be other possible explanations. She liked to gossip about who was having an affair with whom and the like, and usually told me about what was hot. If she got the 2 leftovers from any of her friends who were partying at the hotel that night, I expected her to tell me some gossip, but no questions came from me. I decided to play the game and find out who the hell the bastard was that managed to get into my beloved wife's panties. Over the years, many guys had tried to do this, even some who were friends of ours, but as far as I knew, all had failed. She never mentioned her night out again, and I didn't ask. On Friday, I had lunch at the hotel and went to Gents, bought a 3-pack of condoms from the vending machine, and discovered that they were the same brand as the ones that appeared in my drawer. The following Tuesday night, Annie told me that she had talked to Katrin, who asked her to go to the dance with her on Wednesday night because she didn't want to miss an evening with one of her favorite bands. Kathrin's husband agreed after some persuasion, and it was up to me if I had no objections. Neither of them wanted to go alone. I told her, "Sounds great. It's time her husband and I met. We can go to the pub and have a beer while you ladies dance." She turned pale, but tried to smile, and replied with poorly concealed anger, "Are you crazy? You two can't go out drinking and leave the kids alone." "You are right as always. Please forgive my simple joke," I told her with a smile, and thought to myself, "No way, better let their mother go out with whores. I'll debunk you, bitch." Wednesday night, she was dressed in a very sexy black dress with a high slit on her right leg, beautiful colored light stockings, and black high-heeled shoes. Just like last week, she asked me to take her to the hotel, which I did. When she went to the bathroom, I went into the bedroom and counted the condoms. We had quickie sex on Saturday night, so there should have been 11 left, but there were only 8, which meant she was well stocked for a night out. My plan for the evening was very simple. Take her to the hotel, go home, change, and get to the hotel again. What to do there depended on what was going on. I drove her to the hotel and she walked through the door. There is a 7-Eleven store on the next block from the hotel. I stopped there and got out of the car to buy candy for the kids who were supposed to be home alone that evening. As I was getting out of the car, I saw Annie come out of the hotel and stand on the sidewalk. I stood closer to the building so I could see her so she couldn't see me. Much to my relief, I have a very common car, a blue Volvo V70, and there were 2 cars between us, so she didn't recognize it. A few minutes later, a silver Mercedes pulled up outside the hotel. She opened the door, got in, hugged and kissed him, and didn't notice me as they drove past. At this time, there wasn't much traffic in the small Scandinavian town on a September evening, so I followed them at a safe distance. They pulled into a neighborhood of fairly expensive houses near the center of town, where they stopped in the driveway of a beautiful house. Now I knew who the damn bastard was. His name is Tom, but he's better known by the nickname Toy Boy because he lives with and works for Mrs. Strand, the divorced owner of the best women's clothing store in town. Mrs. Strand is about 53 years old, meaning she's about 18 years older than her toy boy. But she keeps her body in good shape and looks much younger than her years. Mrs. Strand spends a few weeks every fall at a spa in the Canary Islands, which is probably why Toy Boy entertains at home. I took another drive around the block, pondering my situation and what to do. Sure, I could go home and pretend I didn't know anything. It's not my style to hide my head in the sand like an ostrich, and such characterless behavior could only make things worse in the future. Sitting in the car for hours outside the house and catching her taking a nice walk when she got out would only make her feel disgusted with such a cowardly slacker and end in divorce. Not my style. I had to stop it. I parked in the driveway behind his Mercedes and walked around the house. The house was well sealed off from prying eyes, so most of the Venetian blinds were up. Tom and Annie were in the semi-dark dining room where the only source of light was the candles on the table with dinner for 2. He stood behind her, placing his hands on her chest, and whispered something in her ear. She smiled, took off her panties, and held them out to him. I'd seen enough. It was time for action. I walked to the main entrance and rang the bell. When no one opened within 10 seconds, I rang it again. Then I heard a voice outside the door. "Who's there?" "Your car has been damaged by burglars." When Tom opened the door, I pushed him to the side, told him, "My wife is here," and took a quick step toward the dining room, where Annie turned ash gray when she realized it was me who had barged in. She screamed, "What the hell are you doing?" I yelled back, "Stop your whoring!" Then, a screaming toy boy burst into the dining room. "I'm calling the police!" Annie calmed him down by saying, "He's my husband, calm down." "What the hell is he doing here?" "Ask him." I asked Annie, "What the hell are you doing here?" She replied, "Negotiating a new management position at his firm." "He owns a brothel? You don't have to take your panties off for a simple job at the store." I turned to Tom and said, "Don't try to cheat and hand me the whore's panties." He handed them over and I gave them to Annie and told her to put them on, which she did with a flushed face. She now realized that she had lost her face and her game. She began to cry loudly. Then I asked Tom, "How much did you pay that whore when you slept with her last Wednesday?" "Nothing." "Time to pay up. Great whores don't come cheap. Your wallet, please." He erupted in swearing and objections, but calmed down when I offered to bill Mrs. Strand for the pleasures of her boy toy. He held out his wallet to me, and I found it contained a surprisingly large sum. I took out what amounted to about $700 US dollars. Annie was still crying and did not utter a word. I asked her, "Do you want to come home with me, or would you rather stay here with this Jiggalo?" "Take me home." We walked out of the house without speaking to each other. On the way home, I stopped in the parking lot and told her it was better to try to keep our children out of this mess and talk here and now. I asked her, "Am I really that bad that you have to go to a damn Jiggalo?" She started sobbing and replied, "It's not what you think." "Probably even worse. Tell me how the hell I found you without panties in that Jiggalo's nest. You have no idea how much I already know, so don't try any bullshit." She told me a story about how Marie, her married work colleague, was on a date at a hotel last Wednesday night, and her date had a friend with him. Marie's neighbor, who had promised to go on a blind date with her friend, had to stay home with a sick child, and so Marie asked Annie. She knew that I knew Marie was a cheating slut, and I didn't like her doing anything to Marie. That's why she lied about Catherine. Annie had no intentions of sleeping with her friend or anyone else. She only wanted to dance and have a good time. The friend Marie was dating turned out to be a real jerk, and she dumped him after a while. Then she met Tom, who, along with Mrs. Strand, was at the same party as Annie and her boss Lisa after the fashion show. Tom danced a few tunes with her and gave her a deep impression of a nice guy. Last Wednesday, he had told her that Mrs. Strand was in Gran Canaria and had invited her to have a drink at his place, which of course she had refused. So he kept her company at the dance and even bought her a few drinks. In her opinion, the party was perfectly innocent until Marie and her companion came to the bar for a drink, and she gave Annie the key to the room and said to her and Tom, "You lovebirds can use the room while we settle down here with a drink." Annie said she felt a little sorry for Tom, who had been on edge most of the evening, so she agreed. In the room, they cuddled for a while, after which she slept with him. A few minutes later, Marie and her date returned, and nothing more happened that evening. She had a drink at the bar and went home. I asked her, "You wrapped a condom around him. Where did you get it?" "I got a box from Marie when I got to the hotel. She bought some at the ladies." "Did you take condoms with you to the Jiggalo's nest tonight?" "Yes." I think she told me the truth, at least about the condoms, but I found it hard to believe that an experienced boy toy was acting like a teenager. Tom called her at work several times, apologizing for his fiasco and offering her a romantic dinner as compensation. She agreed after his fourth call, but didn't promise him sex, which he agreed to. In the car, he noticed she had stockings instead of pantyhose and asked for panties as a souvenir. That was her story, true or not, about what happened in the hotel room. Why did Tom pay for sex he didn't have? Probably to avoid a reputation as a fast slut. I asked Annie, "Did you want to fuck him tonight?" "I don't know." "Do you realize that could happen?" "Yes." "Did you want to?" "I don't know, it was up to him. If he made me feel good and horny, I can't deny I would have let him fuck me. I'm sorry. It wasn't love, just sex. You are my only love. Please forgive me. Will you forgive me?" "We'll see. It all depends on whether you told me the truth." "I swear I did. How could you know I was there? My God, you robbed him." "Small town gossip. Ask your friends. Tom didn't mind the amount, so it must have been worth every cent of what he paid. Did you really tell me the whole truth?" She began to cry. "My God, does the whole town know about Tom and me? What are you doing with his money?" "It's whore money. I'll do what I have to do to recover from this terrible humiliation." "Please don't do anything stupid. Our marriage won't stand for it." "That's your problem. I didn't ask you to sleep with that damn Jiggalo. How many others have you spread your legs for over the years? Even the Jiggalo must think you're a cheap whore. Only 2 drinks and a few tunes on the dance floor got your panties off, and tonight they were taken off first thing in his nest. You can leave if you don't agree with what I'm going to do or not do. How I feel right now, I don't care." She swore she'd never fooled me before and said this was the first and last time Tom would fool me. We went home without further conversation, and for the next 2 weeks we hardly spoke to each other. One evening, about 2 weeks later, I met W at a small Italian restaurant in the nation's capital. My friend introduced me, and when W got my story, she accepted, even though it was against her rules. She was gorgeous, expensively dressed, naturally beautiful, resplendent with high class and money. She was in law school with only a few very wealthy regulars, enough to pay her tuition and live a hassle-free life. Over coffee, after a very pleasant dinner, she told me that she accepted me as an interesting case, and if I agreed to her terms, we could go to our double room in one of the best hotels in town. I used all of Tom's money, but took the bulk of it from my own pocket. I didn't care about the amount. It was worth every penny. W was great both in bed and as an understanding listener to my problem. A few hours later, she said, "Game over, but I like you, and if you want me to stay, I can spend the rest of the night as a friend." Of course, I agreed and had incredible fun with a very different W. After breakfast together, we parted with a hug, and W said to me, "Your wife is much better than you think. Go home, be nice to her, and start over. Good luck." Back home, I said to Annie, "We are at a crossroads, and it is time to choose a path. Do we split off in different directions or start over together?" Together. Same thing. Let's forget all of this, never bring it up again, and start over at this very moment.